The black was never truly silent. Even in the void of space, where no air carried sound, the hum of sensors, the nervous breaths of crewmen, and the soft crackle of comlinks filled the Imperial warship Veilbreaker. Positioned at the edge of Sector 91C, the fleet was meant to be a show of strength: 5 destroyers, 2 dreadnoughts, and the carrier Honor Flame. The human colonies had expanded too far, too fast, and now they were being reminded of their place. But something was off. "Sir," Lieutenant Vey called, her voice tight and uncertain. "We've got movement. Deep space, no drive signature." High Commander Thaler leaned forward. "What kind of movement?" She hesitated. I don't know. It's gliding, fast. No propulsion detected, but it's covering distance. Like it's drifting on purpose." A murmur passed through the bridge crew. Ships didn't just drift with intention, not in a straight line, not toward an Imperial fleet. Thaler turned to the holo display. A small dark blip moved across the star map, untagged, unclassified. No identifiers, no heat signature, no ID beacon. It was almost invisible if not for the light it occasionally blocked out. "Put it on visuals," he said. A few clicks later, the central screen lit up, and a cold hush settled over the room. It wasn't a ship, not by any design they recognized. It didn't gleam with hull plating or bristle with weapon ports. It looked more like a shadow, or the memory of a ship, like something that should have rotted away eons ago. Its surface pulsed faintly, like skin over metal. No lights, no markings, just motion. Steady, silent, wrong. "Bring the Honor Flame's cannons online," Thaler ordered. "Sir," Vey said again, her voice now quieter. "The Veritas and Grave Barge, they've gone dark." He snapped his head toward her. "What?" "No communications. No energy signatures. They're just off the grid, same time that thing passed near them." The blip on the screen edged closer. Still drifting, still quiet. But behind it, 2 ships, each capable of vaporizing a moon, were dead. Thaler didn't waste time. "Sound full alert. All hands ready. Weapons hot. Defensive grid active. I want that thing marked now." But they couldn't mark it. Their systems wouldn't lock on. It was as if the ship was made of something outside sensor comprehension. Even their tracking drones spun wildly the closer they got, their feeds full of static. And then it stopped. The ghost ship, or whatever it was, halted mid-space. No inertia, just stillness, directly between the fleet and the human-settled planet of Artaxis below. Every commander on the bridge stared. Then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. The ship's systems stuttered. Gravity shifted for a breath. Something passed through them, an energy, a frequency, something that didn't belong in this reality. And then came the whisper. Not through comms, not through speakers, through their minds. "Leave." Thaler's mouth opened, but no words came. "Sir." Vey's face was pale. "Orders?" He stared at the ship. The thing didn't fire, didn't threaten. It just was. And yet every instinct Thaler had, every bone forged by years of military rule, every scar, every victory, told him the same thing. This was not something to fight. He'd seen worlds burn, led sieges that cracked continents, but never, never had an entire dreadnought died silently. He pressed the fleet-wide communication. "All units, fall back. Immediate retreat. Do not engage." Murmurs of disbelief crackled through the command channels, but no one disobeyed. One by one, the mighty Empire ships turned, leaving the shadow behind them. The Honor Flame hesitated. Its captain, a bold woman named Siral, refused to abandon position. Thaler could only watch from the rear visuals as the ghostly shape began to drift again, straight toward her. he sent one last message. "Saral, for the love of the gods, run." There was no reply. Only static, then silence, and just like that, the honor flame vanished from all sensors. The retreat was chaos, not because the Imperial ships lacked discipline, but because they had no protocol for this. There were no entries in the archives about ghost ships that unmade capital-class vessels without firing a shot. No war manuals could explain what just happened to the honor flame. The fleet's silent formation shattered into disarray. Dreadnoughts flanked the edges to shield the retreat, even though no one dared engage the entity. As they pulled out of Sector 91C, Thalor sat in his command chair, fists clenched around the armrests, eyes fixed on the holoscreen showing Artaxis shrinking in the distance. He had never lost a ship under his command. Not like this. Vey broke the silence. "It's not pursuing." He didn't answer. "It's just hovering where the honor flame vanished." Still, nothing from Thalor. Then came the call, encrypted, local frequency, from the planet below. "Unidentified Imperial vessel. This is Captain Rhys Aiden, Human Colonial Defense, Artaxis Outpost 4. You left something behind." The crew flinched. A human calling an Empire flagship unidentified wasn't just bold, it was suicidal. Thalor keyed the comm. "This is High Commander Thalor of the Empire's 12th Fleet. Your outpost is under the protection of the Imperial banner. Stand down and explain your signal." The reply was dry, almost amused. "You mean, was under your protection? Seems like your fleet ran the moment our little friend arrived." Thalor grit his teeth. "You're sitting on a Class F settlement. I suggest you remember who governs this system." But Rhys didn't back down. "Right. The same Empire that got their flagship eaten by a ghost. Tell me, Commander, did you even try to communicate with it?" A silence followed. Vey turned toward Thalor slowly. It hadn't even occurred to them. "No," Thalor finally admitted. "We don't negotiate with anomalies." Rhys laughed, bitter and short. "And you wonder why your Empire keeps losing ground. That's not an anomaly. That's her." Vey leaned closer, whispering. "Sir, did he say her?" "I heard it," Thalor replied. He tapped the comm again. "Who is she, Captain?" Rhys's voice dropped low. "We don't know what she is. We just call her the Wraith. She appeared 6 months ago. First at the edge of Orion's dust line, took out a mining fleet. Then she was spotted over Myra 5, hovering over a rebel outpost. Everyone went silent. Not dead, not destroyed, just gone. No wreckage, no screams, no communications, just absence." Vey's face paled. "Sir, this lines up. We had similar disappearances reported in Imperial sectors. We dismissed them as pirate attacks or freak malfunctions." "They weren't," Thalor said grimly. Rhys continued. "Every time she shows up, it's the same. Silent, patient, almost like she's watching, waiting. But there's a pattern." Thalor narrowed his eyes. "What kind of pattern?" "Colonial systems. Human colonies, specifically. She only appears when Imperial ships arrive near them." "Then she's a weapon. Some secret tech your people are hiding." "No, Commander. She's not ours. She doesn't protect us either. But if I had to guess..." A pause. "She hates empires." Thalor turned away from the screen, staring at the dark sector now void of the honor flame. The entire time they'd assumed superiority, believed technology and order gave them dominance. But the Wraith didn't care about dominance. She didn't want to fight. She wanted them to leave. "Sir," Vey said, looking down at her console. "She's moving again." "Toward us?" "Number toward the surface." Thalor froze. "Toward Artaxis?" "Yes, direct descent." The holoscreen lit up with flashing alarms. The dark silhouette moved like a smear across the stars, slow and steady, heading toward the largest human city on the planet, Alaron Ridge. Reese's voice came through again, this time quieter. "She's not here to attack. She's here to judge." Thaler frowned. "Judge what?" "The same thing you're afraid of, us." The wraith descended like a whisper of doom. From the skies above Alaron Ridge, it came, not with the roar of engines or the blare of landing sirens, but with silence so deep it seemed to pull sound from the air itself. People emerged from shelters, balconies and rooftops, their eyes drawn to the sky. Children clutched their parents. Soldiers on the ground stood frozen, fingers on triggers, hearts pounding. Captain Reese Aiden stood at the outpost's edge, high on the western bluff overlooking the city. He had his sidearm holstered. Not that it would make any difference. He'd seen footage of what happened to the Myra 5 garrison. A full rebel defense grid swallowed in lightless void within seconds. But this wasn't the same. This wasn't destruction. This was presence. A terrible, watching presence. "She's not hostile," his adjutant whispered beside him. "Not yet." "Yeah?" Reese muttered. "You want to go down there and shake her hand?" The wraith hovered 200 meters above the city. A great, dark mass with no clear beginning or end. From this distance, it resembled a ship, but also something more organic. It pulsed, it breathed, like a massive heart forged from alien alloys and gravity wells. And then it changed. Before their eyes, its skin shimmered. Not lights, not energy, but images, projections, holograms maybe, if they were that crude. But these felt real. It was the city, their city. Alaron Ridge, but twisted. Buildings crumbled, fires burned, people ran. Screams, though silent, rippled through the illusion. A war scene that hadn't happened. Yet. It was a warning. "She's showing us what we become," said Reese quietly. "Or what we cause." His adjutant swallowed hard. "We haven't done any of that." Reese shook his head. "We haven't, yet. But the Empire's breathing down our necks. One more crackdown, one more rebel flare-up, one more shipment of resource slaves off-world, and this city falls apart." That was the truth. Reese had done his best to keep the colony stable, but tensions were rising. Imperials wanted full resource control. Locals wanted independence. The Empire offered protection, but it came with mining quotas, off-world conscription, and strict surveillance. The Wraith knew. Somehow, it knew. Meanwhile, in orbit, Thaler watched the same projection on his bridge screen. A live feed was still connected to Reese's uplink, and what they were seeing left his crew speechless. "She's showing them a future," Vey murmured. "No," Thaler said. "She's showing us what happens if we stay." He could feel it in his bones. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a test, and Thaler's instinct screamed the same thing they had back in Sector 91C. Leave. "She doesn't hate humans," Vey said suddenly. "She hates what happens because of us." That struck him. Hard. For all their might, the Empire had spread itself thin, pressing down on fragile colonies, rewriting local cultures, feeding the central core with labor and ore and obedience. They had justified it as bringing order. But maybe that order bred monsters. "Sir," a junior officer interrupted, voice shaking. "Command Central is asking for a full report. They want to know why we abandoned engagement." Thaler stared at the projection of Alaron Ridge burning. The people. The fear. The future they were being shown if he made the wrong call. "They can wait." Back on the surface, the Wraith's shimmering illusions faded. And then something even stranger happened. The entire underside of the ship opened, not with mechanical hatches or hydraulic arms, but like a pupil dilating. A soft white light poured out, enveloping the center of the city. People panicked, screamed, but there was no heat, no pressure, only stillness. And then the voices came, not loud, not spoken, but felt, not just to Rhys, not just to Thaylor, to everyone. What you build will decide what I destroy. It echoed through every mind on Artaxis, through every fleet officer, through every child. Then the light collapsed inward, and the wraith began to ascend. Rhys stood in awe. "She's not just watching," he whispered. "She's weighing." The wraith stopped just above the atmosphere, hanging like a judgmental god. Waiting. Thaylor turned to Vey. "We're not just at war with rebels anymore." She looked back at him, her voice barely a breath. "We're at war with our consequences." For hours she hovered, just above the clouds, just below the stars. The wraith neither moved nor spoke again, yet her presence wrapped around the planet like invisible chains. It wasn't fear that held the people in place now. It was uncertainty. That same deep, gut-sick feeling you get when you realize something ancient, something beyond your species' comprehension, has noticed you and is waiting to see what you'll do. In Alaran Ridge, the streets were quiet. People didn't go to work. Markets stayed closed. Children whispered instead of laughing. Everyone was watching the sky. The massive silhouette of the wraith hung over them like a question mark written in shadow. And somewhere in that stillness, in the poorer edge of the city, a young girl named Mara stared up from the rooftop of her family's crumbling apartment block. She was 13, sharp-eyed, too clever for her age, and angry in the way only a child raised on broken promises could be. Her father had been conscripted by the Empire 3 years ago, shipped off to some mining belt beyond Orion, never returned. Her mother worked double shifts to make up for the ration cut they'd faced afterward. Mara understood more about politics and power than most adults. She also understood this. The wraith didn't come for nothing. She came for them. "Do you think it's going to kill us?" her little brother, Tavi, asked. He stood beside her, gripping her sleeve. Mara didn't answer right away. She just stared. "No," she finally said. "I think she wants to see if we'll kill ourselves first." Tavi didn't understand, not really, but he nodded anyway. Back at Outpost 4, Rhys poured another shot of stale whiskey into a dented metal cup. He hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot, and his uniform clung to him with the sour dampness of stress. He hadn't stopped replaying the wraith's words since she said them. "What you build will decide what I destroy." What did that even mean? Civilization? Government? Alliances? Or did it mean choices? He slammed the cup down and flicked on the transmitter. "Hi, Commander Thaler? You still in orbit?" The channel crackled for a second. Then the voice came. "I am. And I assume you have something more than another warning." Rhys hesitated. "I have a question." "Then ask it." Rhys took a breath. "Why did you come here in the first place?" A pause. "To remind you of your place." Rhys nodded bitterly. "And do you know it now?" Thaler didn't reply immediately. He stared out his viewport, where the wraith still lingered. "I don't know what she is, but I know this. If we don't pull out of this colony, she'll make sure we leave in pieces." "She already made you leave," Rhys said. "We're just waiting to see if you come back." Another long silence. Then, "You've made your point, Captain." He cut the channel. Moments later, the Imperial fleet began to shift, first in subtle adjustments, then full withdrawal patterns. Not a retreat this time. A relocation, leaving orbit, returning to the jump lanes. Rhys watched it all from his office. "She did it," his adjutant said, almost smiling. "She scared them off." Rhys didn't smile. No, he said. She gave them a choice. They're just smart enough to take it. Back on the rooftop, Mara watched the ships fade into the clouds. Where are they going? Tavi asked. Mara squinted. Away, for now. She looked back up at the Wraith. But not because they care, because something bigger told them to. And then, just as silently as she arrived, the Wraith began to rise. Not fast, not fleeing, but slow, like a judge leaving the courtroom without delivering a verdict. She disappeared past the clouds, vanishing from view, but never truly gone, because everyone knew she was still out there, watching, waiting. 5 years later, her name was spoken like a myth. The Wraith. Not everyone believed she was real anymore. Some claimed she was a rebel hologram tactic. Others said it was imperial propaganda spun out of control to mask a defeat. But in the outer colonies, in the places where the Empire's grip had once been steel-tight and unshakable, her shadow still lingered. On Artaxis, life had changed. The Empire never returned, not officially. They left under the guise of diplomatic reassessment, but the truth was carved into the memory of every soldier who saw the honor flame disappear. They weren't in control anymore. Something had scared the rulers of half the galaxy into blinking first, and people remembered. But memory fades, especially when no more ships vanish, no more minds are touched, no more warnings are whispered across the stars. And so the tension crept back in. The old arguments resurfaced. This time it came not from the Empire, but from the humans themselves. Mara was 18 now. No longer a curious child on rooftops. She'd grown up hard, shaped by years of watching her people teeter between freedom and chaos. She wore a leather jacket stitched with the white insignia of the Ridge Watch, a civilian patrol force meant to keep order without relying on either Empire or rebel muscle. She had a scar across her cheek from a riot 2 years back, and her fists were calloused from more than just practice. But her eyes hadn't changed, still sharp, still angry, still searching. That evening, she stood at the base of the old city tower, a crowd gathering as shouting echoed from the square. Flags waved, red ones, black ones, fists painted on cloth. The Free Colonies movement had returned, and this time, they weren't talking peace. "We don't need protection," one speaker yelled from the plinth. "Not from the Empire, not from any ghost. We're strong enough to stand on our own." Mara pushed through the crowd. She didn't like the way this was going. These protests were becoming more like rallies, and the lines between self-governance and militancy were blurring fast. She reached the front just as someone threw a bottle. It shattered against the plinth. Gas hissed. Screams followed. She didn't hesitate. Her hand shot to her earpiece. "Unit Delta, dispersal protocol, non-lethal. Get these people back." Gas-masked soldiers rushed in, pushing the crowd out with shields and voice amps, but it was already turning ugly. People weren't just angry. They were ready for a fight. The kind you don't start unless you've already convinced yourself the other side is worse. Later, after the streets had cleared and the wounded were patched up, Mara sat alone in the Ridge Watch command post, watching the night sky from the window. "Where are you?" she whispered. No answer, no flicker of shadow, no hum across the city, just stars, cold and distant. The door behind her creaked open. Reese walked in, older, beard grayer, his military coat now replaced by a civilian council sash. "You handled the riot well." She didn't look at him. "They'll be back tomorrow, louder, angrier." "Probably," he said, sitting beside her. "They think freedom means chaos. Others think it means guns. No one agrees on anything except that they hate whoever's in charge." She looked at him, finally. "And you? What do you think freedom is?" He smiled faintly. "Choice. That's all it ever was. The freedom to choose who we become." She stared out again. And what if we choose wrong? He hesitated. Then she'll come back. They both fell silent at that. A moment later, her earpiece chirped. Mara, you're going to want to see this. We've got an inbound object. No drive signature, no transponder, heading straight for Artaxis. Her blood turned to ice. Reese stood up fast. No, it can't be. But she already knew. It was her. The Wraith was returning, and this time she wasn't silent. The alert spread through Alaron Ridge like fire on dry grass. Inbound object. No drive trail. No heat. No propulsion. It's her. Mara didn't wait for backup. She was already sprinting down the watchtower's main stairwell, 2 steps at a time, her boots thudding on metal grates. The air was heavy with something unspoken, like the entire city had inhaled at once, and was afraid to exhale. Every comms line buzzed with chatter, militia units requesting orders, old-timers whispering prayers, and civilians crying out for something, anything, to stop what they felt coming. At street level, people had gathered again. But it wasn't a riot this time. It was awe. Above them, blotting out part of the western sky, the Wraith was descending. No lights, no engines, just motionless drift, that same eerie quiet wrapping around it like a cloak. But this time, it didn't hover above the city. It was heading for Mara, not metaphorically, literally. The ship, if you could call it that, descended lower than ever before, down through the clouds, down past the atmospheric buffer zone, down until its massive form loomed directly over the Watchtower Plaza, casting a shadow that swallowed blocks of buildings in cold darkness. People screamed and ran, others dropped to their knees. Children cried. Drones fell out of the sky. Even the automated turrets on the eastern wall powered down. The Wraith wasn't here to fight. She was here to see. Mara stood in the plaza, every instinct screaming at her to flee. But she couldn't move. She wasn't frozen by fear. It was something else, something deeper, like a string buried inside her was being pulled gently, firmly, guiding her toward the center. And then the beam came down. Not a weapon, not light, a corridor, a tunnel of translucent energy, humming softly, wrapped around her like a shimmering cage. Only her. No one else. When one of the watch soldiers tried to rush in, he hit the barrier and bounced off, dazed. She was being chosen. Reese's voice cut through her earpiece, sharp and panicked. Mara, do not go in. That's not an invitation, it's a trap. But she already knew that wasn't true. The Wraith didn't lure, she summoned. And Mara had been waiting her whole life. She stepped forward. The corridor lifted her off the ground, slow and steady. The people below looked up, shouting her name. Some begged her to come back. Others just watched, stunned. She didn't look back. The beam pulled her up and through the underbelly of the Wraith. The texture of the corridor shimmered around her, neither metal nor light. Not glass, not force field, just something new, something impossible. And then it opened. She floated into a massive chamber. Round. Endless. The walls pulsed with veins of soft, golden white light. It felt like she was inside a brain, or a heart, something alive, and she wasn't alone. A shape floated in the center. Vaguely human. Tall, draped in dark material that shimmered like starlight. No face, no visible features. Just presence. She couldn't tell if it was real or a projection, but it turned to her all the same. Then, without moving, it spoke, directly into her. You have changed. Mara couldn't speak, not out loud, but something inside her responded. You were watching. I never stopped. She felt emotions that weren't hers, anger, disappointment, and underneath it all, hope. Your kind forgot the warning, the Wraith continued. You began again, the choosing, the dividing, the hoarding. Mara took a breath. Some of us tried to change, some of us still are, That is why you were brought." The chamber dimmed slightly. A wall in front of her peeled away. Not physically, but like a memory unlocking. Images swirled inside. The riot from earlier, the militia preparing weapons, the rebel cells stockpiling explosives in the underground, and the Empire. Ships. So many ships. Heading back. "They return," the Wraith whispered. Mara clenched her fists. "Then stop them." "No." A pause. "You will." She stared. "Me? What you build will decide what I destroy." And then the corridor opened again, brighter now, pulsing with something urgent. She had been marked, a representative, a voice, or perhaps a test. Mara was lowered back to the ground in front of the stunned crowd. Her boots touched the stone, knees buckling. She looked up just as the Wraith began to rise again, quiet, slow, ever watching. The people stared at her like she was something else now, because she was. The Wraith had chosen her, and war was coming. The world didn't go back to normal. Not after what happened in the plaza. Not after the Wraith chose Mara. She tried to walk home that night, tried to slip through the alleyways, pull her hood over her face, blend into the city she'd known her whole life. But it was impossible. People stopped talking when she passed. They stared, whispered, pointed. Some bowed their heads. Others simply backed away, afraid. It wasn't fame. It was fear. By morning, her name was on every colony transmission. Mara Venn, touched by the Wraith. Some called her a prophet. Some called her a weapon. A few even called her a traitor. And none of them were entirely wrong. Reese called an emergency council meeting. She didn't get a choice this time. He had a patrol escort her straight to City Hall. He stood at the head of the long ironwood table, his jaw tight, eyes sunken from lack of sleep. Around him, the rest of the council, scientists, ex-military officers, local elders, even a few former rebels, sat in stiff silence. Every eye turned to Mara as she entered. "You've been chosen," Reese said without ceremony. "So explain what that means." Mara took her seat and spoke slowly, deliberately. "She showed me everything, not just what's happening here, but out there, across the other colonies. The Wraith's been watching them all, tracking where war is likely, where hate is growing, where greed is spreading. She's waiting for a line to be crossed." "And you," one councilwoman interrupted, "are supposed to tell us what that line is?" "No," Mara replied. "I'm supposed to prevent us from crossing it." Laughter broke out, sharp and bitter. "You're 18, barked one of the military reps. "We've got entire districts on the brink of civil war, rebel splinters arming themselves in the mountains. And now intel says the Empire's fleet is inbound again, 6 days out. You think you can just hold all that back with words?" "No," Mara said flatly. "Not with words." She paused. "But maybe with truth." Reese raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "She didn't choose me because I'm special. She chose me because I'm angry. Because I've seen this place rot from the inside. I've felt how power is misused, how easy it is to turn on each other the moment we feel threatened. She knows we'll destroy ourselves before the Empire even sets foot here." One of the rebels leaned forward. "So what? You're her mouthpiece now." "I'm a mirror," Mara said. "She didn't come to punish us. She came to warn us." The room fell quiet again. And then Reese spoke, calm but cold. "The Empire will arrive in 6 days. They claim they're coming to re-establish order peacefully. But we know what that means. They'll put boots on the ground, then checkpoints, then curfews, then disappearances." Everyone nodded. No one disagreed. "She'll destroy them," someone muttered. Mara shook her head. "Not right away. The Wraith only intervenes after we fail. If we fight them without cause, if we spark war, shed blood, escalate, she won't protect us. She'll wipe us all out." That was the message. Rhys sighed. Then we've got a choice. Exactly, Mara said. We either prepare for war, or prove we're worth saving. By doing what? Unifying, fast, open the rebel channels, reconnect the colonies, get the militia leaders to the table, disarm the agitators on both sides, start broadcasting truth, not fear, and when the Empire arrives... She looked around the room, letting her words land. We show them we're not broken. Another silence. Then Rhys nodded once. You've got 6 days, Mara. She stood. Then let's not waste them. And across the stars, in the deep black stretch of space, 6 Imperial ships entered pre-jump formation. In the lead vessel, High Commander Thaler stared at a recent scan of Artaxis. His face was stony, but his eyes were wary. She's still there? He asked. Vey looked up from her console. No sightings since the last descent, but locals say she's watching. Thaler narrowed his eyes. She always is. And with that, the fleet entered the void. They arrived at dawn. 6 Imperial warships broke through the upper atmosphere of Artaxis, their hulls gleaming like blades against the sun. Massive, methodical, unhurried. They didn't bring fire. Not yet. Their formation was tight, clean, deliberate, a show of force, not an act of war. Dropships detached one after another, descending toward the surface like silver raindrops. And the world held its breath. Mara stood at the base of the old Unity Square, where the city had once hosted parades back when the Empire was still worshipped like a god. The statue of the first governor had long since been torn down, replaced by a simple metal pole bearing a flag with no faction, just a single white circle over gray. The symbol of neutrality, of choice. She wore her Ridgewatch jacket, but beneath it, armor plates borrowed from rebel stocks. She carried no weapon. Behind her stood a wall of voices, council members, militia leaders, ex-rebels, medics, engineers, farmers. Not an army, a people, and above them the sky shimmered faintly. She was watching. The Wraith, hovering just beyond the clouds, still, silent, a god without a voice, until she needed one. The first Imperial dropship landed with a hiss of steam, its side hatch unfolding like a mouth. Soldiers filed out in rigid lines, visors down, rifles held across their chests but not raised. Then he emerged. High Commander Thaler, older, wearier, but no less dangerous. He stepped forward, hands behind his back, flanked by 2 armored lieutenants. His eyes locked on Mara immediately. No hesitation, no confusion. You, he said. I remember you. Mara didn't flinch. I remember you too. You ran. A flicker of something, anger, amusement, crossed his face. I made a tactical retreat, he said coldly. No, Mara said. You listened. That's why you're still alive. His mouth tightened, but he didn't argue. We're not here to fight, he said finally. Not unless we're forced. Then don't be, she replied. The wind shifted slightly. The faint shimmer in the sky darkened. People around her looked up, uneasy. Thaler noticed, too. He looked to the heavens, then back at her. You think she'll stop us again? Mara shook her head. Number, she's not here to stop anyone. Not anymore. Thaler frowned. Explain. She's here to witness. That's it. She gave us the choice. This time it's up to us. We fire first. She ends us all. You oppress, enslave, or incite. And she burns your fleet down to atoms. You force her hand, and no one walks away. Thaler's lieutenants shifted uncomfortably, but he stayed still. You expect us to just leave? I expect you to see, Mara said. We're not the same people you left behind. We're not Empire. We're not rebels. We're not trying to overthrow or serve. We're trying to live. And if you can't accept that... She looked up, eyes locking on that great ghost in the sky. Then she'll end the conversation for us. A silence fell, so complete even the breeze stopped. Then, from above, the clouds parted. A beam of light fell, not blinding, not loud, just final. It landed between them, neither warm nor cold, neither inviting nor hostile, it simply was. The crowd gasped. Thalor stared. Mara didn't move, and then she heard it, not in her ears, not in her mind, but in her bones. Judgment withheld, choice observed, outcome pending. Thalor took a step back, pale. She spoke to me. So now you believe, Mara said quietly. I always did, he admitted. I just hoped I wouldn't have to again. The light faded. The clouds closed. The wraith rose, slowly, disappearing into the sky. She was leaving them to their decisions. And this time, there would be no third warning. Thalor turned to his officers. Stand down. Full withdrawal. I won't be the one who triggers extinction. They nodded. And as the dropships retracted and the warships pulled away, Mara finally allowed herself to breathe. They'd survived. Not through power, but through restraint, through change. She looked around at her people. No cheers, no applause, just quiet understanding. They hadn't won. They'd been spared, for now. But it was enough. Mara turned toward the sky, whispering just loud enough for the wind to carry, "We heard you!" And somewhere in the stars, the wraith waited. Watching. Always watching.